This Three Beards Media podcast may contain mature themes, and if you're not down with that, we got 3 words for you. Like the podcast. Nailed it!
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 1 of the Hawk's Eye View. My name is Drew Shipley, along with my co-host, Andrew Barber. It feels good to have episode 1 launching. Andrew, how are you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing great, Drew. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. We're getting pretty close to opening day here, just shy of 3 weeks here. So today we're going to kind of open up the show with some realignment talk, and then we're going to go game by game. Have 3 game segments of our predictions and go into an overall record and kind of just an outlook on the season overall. It'll be pretty brief tonight. Andrew, a lot of realignment over the weekend. What was your big takeaways there?
My big takeaway is that we are moving closer and closer to the consolidation of college football into 2 major conferences, the SEC and the Big Ten. I really... Oregon and Washington coming in as junior members. They'll get full shares eventually, just like Nebraska, Maryland, and Rutgers did. When they came in, they were junior members. But I'm really looking forward to some new matchups. I kind of wonder about what other things might be impacted by realignment. The new 12-team college football playoff, the conference scheduling, because there's already been talk of the Big Ten moving to 10 conference games. Well, we know that might impact some things for the Iowa Hawkeyes because they like to have 7 home games every year. So if they move to 10 conference games, will they insist on their 2 non-conference games being at home for the 7 home game revenue? There's going to be a lot of fallout from all of the realignment, and the Big 12 obviously made their moves as well. And I thought those were very good moves as well, and really sets them up in a good position for the future also. But we're heading towards consolidation into 2 conferences. In Florida State, their president has pretty much all but stated their intent to leave the ACC, and I think that's a signal to others like Clemson, Miami, UNC, maybe a few others to get off the ship before it sinks, unlike what some of the Pac-12 members did. And now we see the fallout with Washington State and Oregon State. So those are my major takeaways, but anything stick out for you?
So, everybody knows by now Washington and Oregon is joining the Big Ten starting next season, joins USC and UCLA. With 18 teams now, Andrew, I have a hard time believing that we won't have a division system of some form in football. I just have a hard time thinking that, there's going to just take the top 2 teams, the 2 highest ranked teams, which will likely be Michigan and Ohio State, and then just leave the rest to rot, with the 12-team playoff kind of saves that, I guess. It's kind of sad for me being a traditionalist to see what's happening to the Pac-12, now the Pac-4, what happens to Stanford and Cal. I mean, they're talking about Cal dropping their athletics program altogether, and that's pretty significant. And they just haven't been very good lately. So, they have no revenue stream whatsoever to produce for the universities, so they have no reason to participate in NCAA sports anymore. So that's pretty sad. I don't know what's going to happen with them. And then kind of the nonsense with people talking about was the ACC picking up Stanford and Cal. That doesn't make any sense. I don't think true discussions are actually being had there. But like Stanford's going to be involved somewhere. They have to be. And then, yeah, poor Oregon State, poor Washington State. You got to feel bad for those fan bases. They've had some historic success as well, over the last 40, 50 years. So it's sad to see what's happening to the Pac-12. And I'm actually in the camp, Andrew, that there's going to be 3 major conferences when this is all said and done, and how that's going to look between, the Big 12 and the ACC. Who's the SEC who are they going to pick up, with all this fallout? They're at 16 teams currently, which has been a pretty good model of success for their conference in general. But I mean, eventually they're going to have to expand too, right? If they're going to be one of the 2.
Yeah. And Florida State and Clemson make a lot of sense there. The geographic location, it really depends on if you think, is the Big Ten going to 20? Are they going to 24? Does that mean the SEC will go to 20 themselves? You're not going to, but neither one of those conferences are going to take teams just to take teams. It's all about the money, the financials. You talked about the financials with Cal. Well, the financials for Florida State and Clemson, because of the football revenue alone, are really good. Same thing with the U of Miami. So that the Big Ten is going to want. I mean, there were rumors about the Big Ten adding Florida State and Clemson, which I don't think makes a lot of sense unless they add a few others on the East Coast as well. But those are the valuable brands that are out there. Notre Dame. Will Notre Dame join a conference? Probably not, unless they're actually forced to by some sort of rules being made. But right now, even at 18 and 16, the Big and the SEC, because of the brands inside of those conferences, hold a lot of power in all of the college football playoff expansion talks. And when the new TV deal comes up in 2025 for the ESPN, they lose the rights in 2025, and there's a new bidding war on the college football playoffs. Well, you got to think Fox will be in on it. NBC, CBS, ESPN, it'll be a conglomeration of all of those channels. Well, Fox is going to push hard for the Big Ten because that's their main partner in terms of broadcasting. ESPN is going to push hard for the SEC. I don't see the TV networks advocating for the Big 12 or lobbying for the Big 12 as hard as they will for the Big 10 and the SEC. So that's why I'm more in the camp of Power 2 versus Power 3. But I could see them making some sort of rule that says if you're not in a conference, you're not in the playoffs. Therefore, Notre Dame is forced to join a conference, at least for the sake of football.
And where do you think they would go, Andrew? I mean, they've kind of had this football only relationship with the ACC, right?
Right.
Like six games a year. They play in the SEC and every other sport that actually generates revenue, basketball, namely. To me, like, can the Big Ten get enough leverage to swoop them away from the ACC and that relationship, or, things have looked, money trumps everything, and does it really matter? Like, if the Big Ten cuts the bigger check, that's where Notre Dame's going to go, right?
Yeah, that's probably right. It's all about the money, the bigger check. But if Florida State and Clemson and a couple others are not in the ACC, there's not really an ACC anymore.
Right.
So, Notre Dame's not going to, I don't see Notre Dame as a fit for the Big 12. I don't see, they could get more money from either the SEC or the Big 10 as a junior member, which they would never do.
No.
They would demand a full share, and rightfully so. But, a full share in the Big 10 or the SEC is more than double in terms of TV money. I'm talking TV money alone is more than double the Big 12. So it's going to be one of those two. It's just a matter of which one of those two. If it comes to that, who knows? Maybe Notre Dame will be able to just stay independent. But interesting, something to watch as we go on. Enough of realignment. Can we get started talking about some actual college football?
Let's go. Just short of 3 weeks until opening kickoff, Andrew. Yeah, I'm super stoked for this. We're going to break these games down in or the season in 3-game pods and briefly talk about each one. We're looking at the home opener, Fry Fest weekend, hosting Utah State. Andrew, what's your biggest worry? What do you want to see from the Utah State game, season opener?
Offensive improvement. Just if I could put it really simply, just show me something more than what we saw in last year's season opener. No 7-3, no, this better be, the spread is something like 23.5. I don't know if Iowa will cover. I'm certainly not going to bet on it. But I want to see that over hit. If the over under is 43.5, I believe currently, I want to see that over hit, and I want to see a big part of the reason the over hit being Iowa offense actually puts touchdowns on the board. I mean, if Cade McNamara throws a passing touchdown, and that's Iowa's first touchdown of the season, I think Kinnick might collapse from the noise. Like that's what I want to see, is a Cade McNamara passing touchdown. Offensive improvement and a Cade McNamara passing touchdown.
That's fair.
My main goals for game one.
That's fair, Andrew. What I would say, game one, I want to see domination at the line of scrimmage. I want to see that big jump from the offensive line that Kirk Ferentz has been kind of alluding to in his pressers. He's kind of you kind of know when he's holding a hand by the way his demeanor is on the podium. And it seems like he's talking. He thinks this team is pretty good, but he never really shows his cards. But you can see in his demeanor and his mannerisms that he thinks he's got a good football team here. And dominating the offensive and defensive line of scrimmage, to me, is going to be, set the tone for the season. This should be a 31-7 cover. And I'm a degenerate, Andrew, when it comes to gambling, so I will be betting this game, and I will be betting them to cover. That's just how I feel about it. I want domination on the line at the line of scrimmage, and a big win, big cover.
I think you'll get defensive domination for sure, but we'll see about the offensive domination. I mean, they should. Obviously, we want to see Caleb Johnson run as well. Let's flip the switch. Week 2, things step up in a little bit of a big way. As always, it's the Cyhawk, or El Asico, as some people have dubbed it. Some national people have dubbed it. What are some initial thoughts here for the Cyhawk?
My initial thoughts, Andrew, is who's going to be available for Iowa State.
Right.
Who is playing quarterback? Traditionally, Andrew, like the last 10 years on back, the Iowa State Cyhawk game was the third game in the non-con season. It was the final tune-up until conference play started. So the second week, this shift to the second week is really unique, and a big test early, obviously. First road test at Jack Trice. I want to know who's playing for Iowa State, right? We know who's playing, the 2 deep in Iowa City. So the biggest improvement from football teams, a lot of coaches say, is that the improvement from week 1 to week 2. So starting off on the right foot against Utah State, I think this is a domination, Andrew. I don't see Iowa State having the talent to put up with that defense. And again, who's the passer for Iowa State? I need that question answered before I feel warm and fuzzy about it. But I'm definitely taking an Iowa win here.
Yeah, I will take an Iowa win as well. I mean, in terms of quarterback, we're going to have a true freshman in J.J. Cole making the second start of his college football life against a Phil Parker defense. Or we're going to have Rocco Beck making, I believe, maybe his third start. I think he started a game last year. Who I believe he's a redshirt sophomore, so he's been in the program for a while. I think it's going to be Rocco. If I had to take a guess, I know who it's not going to be, based off the allegations and everything out there. I know it's probably not going to be Hunter Deckers back for week 2. So, yeah, and I will give Iowa State defense, John Haycock, that 3-3-5 they kind of play, where they drop 8. has been kind of tough for Iowa offense to figure out, and it's allowed a lot of these ball games between Iowa and Iowa State in the Matt Campbell era to be close. But I do think you lose Will McDonald, you lose MJ Anderson. Both of them graduated, went on, well, in Will McDonald's case, onto the NFL in the first round. But you have a lot of question marks there. And it came out today that Isaiah Lee is not practicing. He's going to be a big part of the defensive line, or at least he's supposed to be. We don't know what that means in terms of him not practicing and when he'll be back, but you can certainly speculate. But that is the huge thing about this game. And there's some of that on Iowa's side too. Noah Shannon. There's other potentials that I've heard about. I'm going to take an Iowa win here. And I think the line is probably going to be something like 6.5 because there's going to be a lot of Iowa by 6.5. But I do think Iowa will cover that and get their first road win. So let's move it on to Western Michigan. We'll probably break down the Cyhawk a little bit more in depth when we get to that week. But let's move it on to Western Michigan.
I got to tell you, this Western Michigan game does scare me a little bit. Kind of a letdown from the Cyhawk rivalry. They typically underperform coming off the week after Cyhawk. Western Michigan, not a great football team. They hover around bowl eligibility every once in a while, right there with the other directional Michigans. I'll be honest with you, I know nothing about this current football team in Western Michigan. But for whatever reason, this game, to me, I have circled as like a 10-point disappointing win, like 27-17. Just defense played okay. We turned the ball over in the red zone or something. Like it, so fishy, smelly. I don't like this game where it's at. A win's a win. I'm going to make them 3-0. I don't feel good about it, but it'll be a win.
Yeah, I'll be honest as well. I do not know anything about Western Michigan either. I don't have the same sense as you. I think everything is kind of a leading up to week number 4, which is where we'll go in a minute. But I have this as more of a dominating win, Iowa offense get right spot. If there was anything to get right from week 2, if after maybe not looking the best against Iowa State, but still winning. I think this is more of a get right kind of spot. Maybe even a spot where you can get some backups, some playing time. Maybe we can get some Joe Labus or Deacon Hill time. That'll be an interesting thing to monitor this season. Actually, there is a competition for the backup quarterback spot, not the starting spot, but maybe week 3 is somewhere where we can see a backup QB competition in the second half. I think that's kind of where this team is going to be. And I've got 3-0 and probably an Iowa cover on this as well.
I hope we do get to see some backup QB play in that game. I hope you're right, more so than I am predicting for the Western Michigan game. But Andrew, why don't we take a break here? Let's hear a little message from our studio sponsor, Revelton Distillery.
At Revelton Distilling Company, everyone has become a part of the Revelton family. From the Taylors and their daughter who helped perfect their award-winning gins, to the team who installed Lucy, our 33-foot-tall custom-made still, right down to the local farms that provide our coveted corn, and even the cows on those farms who consume our mash byproduct. Want to see the farm to flask come to life? Now you can tour Lucy and find out where we take Iowa's harvest and transform it into our finest spirits. Choose between a 45-minute tour or find out even more by scheduling a VIP behind-the-scenes tour to get the taste of the full Revelton experience. You can visit them at 1400 West Clay Street in Osceola, Iowa, or find all of Revelton's award-winning spirits at any local grocery or spirits retailer.
All right, Andrew, right there after the break, both of us have the Hawks at 3-0 going into Big Ten conference play. And, we don't get the cupcake of Maryland on a Friday night this year. We got to go under the lights. Possible whiteout here in College Park, PA. What do you think about this Penn State matchup, this Penn State team, Andrew?
Confirmed whiteout. However, I will say that this Penn State team is maybe flying a little bit under the radar just because all of the talk in the East Division is Michigan and Ohio State, and rightfully so. But I really do like this Penn State team. They got a lot of talent on both sides of the ball, and they have an offensive line to match their traditionally good defensive line. However, Penn State is 8-9 in whiteout games, I believe. In the last, I think that's within the last 8 or 9 years. I don't know if that's all time, but they do not have such a great record in their last 17 whiteout games. And I seem to remember a cold night in 2009 with some guy named Adrian Claiborne returning a punt for a touchdown that absolutely rocked a whiteout crowd in Penn State. Um, so I have a really hard time forecasting this one because so much will be hinging on Drew Aller, who is a first-time starter, highly rated recruit. A lot of hype about him. But also Iowa has a quarterback who won't be shaken in this kind of environment. He's been there before. Cade McNamara has been in these kinds of environments before. I'm not going to predict a win, but it won't shock me. I'm going to go ahead and take the Nittany Lions by a score of something like 20-17. A very close, a heartbreaker, but I will take Penn State, but barely.
You brought up the biggest point that I have with this game is, this is the first time in 5 years Sean Clifford isn't the quarterback at Penn State. We don't know what they have. We do know what we have finally. We have a Big Ten championship quarterback in Cade McNamara. I'm going to give us the edge just for the fact that I think we're going to run the ball well against them. It's going to be a knockout, drag-out fight. I'm going to take the under, I'll tell you that. And I'm going to go 17-14. I sound like a homer going 4-0 here, but trust me, later on down the schedule, there will be a letdown. So there's a preview for that.
All right. Well, let's flip the script. I believe the next game that we've got is a Michigan State home game to round out September. Michigan State, believe they just had Keon Coleman and then their quarterback Peyton Thorne. Both of those guys, who were key parts of their offense, hit the transfer portal. Mel Tucker, the defense has been very suspect ever since Mel Tucker got there. I don't think they've really done a whole lot to improve it. I see Iowa coming off a disappointing loss with a lot of, pent up aggression and anger off of maybe a disappointing loss at 3-1 and taking it out on poor Sparty in Iowa City, much like they did way back when Kirk Cousins came to town and we 37-0'd them. I see something pretty similar to that this time. The stakes probably aren't the same because Michigan State won't be ranked, but I see a dominant Hawkeye win here in the first Big Ten home game.
Talk about a guy who fleeced somebody for $100 million plus in Mel Tucker.
Absolutely.
Had one good 9-win season, and he's been nothing but a 500 coach ever since. And, they just don't have the talent anymore. Like you said, the only talent they had offensively transferred out. I think this is going to be an ass whooping, Andrew. I really do. I'm with you on it, except I had them beating Penn State. But I'm going to take a win against Michigan State at home, a big cover. That's what I think on that one. I'm going to move them to 5-0.
All right, you got 5-0. I got 4-1. And the next week is Purdue at home, and that is our sixth game. Purdue has a new head coach, former defensive coordinator from Illinois, who ran a really good defense last year. However, I think first-year head coaches commonly, there's a struggle. Iowa is very aware of Purdue now. They really put the hammer on Purdue last year. There was a little bit maybe emphasis on that game because of the Charlie Jones factor, but I don't think Iowa is letting up against Purdue, and I've got them moving to 5-1 rather easily. I think it's a bit of a rebuilding transition year for Purdue. I think they'll be good eventually, but I don't think it's year one. with a new head coach.
There's no David Bell. There's no Charlie Jones. God bless. I'm glad he's
Right.
I'm glad he's gone. Okay. That being said, this is not one of those Purdue teams I think that jumps up and surprises Iowa as they've been. The Brom era was known to do. Just grab Iowa when they least expect it. We were number 2 in the country coming off that win against Penn State, and I was at both of them. So I was at the highest of highs and the lowest of lows the very next week, and then that season kind of turned into a shit show. So, I got another dominant win here for the Hawks, going 6-0 against Purdue, heading to Madison for the next week.
All right, and with Game 6, let's go ahead and hear from our sponsor, Kyle Lehman.
Are you in the market for a new house and unsure of the mortgage process? Want to know that you have someone looking out for you? Kyle Lehman from Wintrust Mortgage is a down-to-earth, knowledgeable lender who can be there for you in your corner. He can work with you in any of the 50 states and is just what you need to expand your home search. Kyle will work with you through the entire process with little to no work from you. Take the worry of the mortgage process out of the equation so that you can focus on looking for your dream home. Contact Kyle at www.wintrust.com/Kyle-Lehman or call him at 515-473-0546.
All right. Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate the support here on the Hawks Eye View. We are still in episode 1. We're moving to the game in Madison. Andrew, this one's a scary one. How do you see it?
I am a little bit more down on Wisconsin than most folks. I know that there's a lot of national pundits that are dubbing Wisconsin as the favorite. I'd say there's a fairly, maybe like a 70-30 split between Wisconsin and Iowa. I think those are the common 2 contenders. I think those are the top 2 teams that people see. And a lot of it is a lot of respect for Luke Fickell and him as a coach, which I do respect Luke Fickell as a coach. However, the big coaching story for Wisconsin this year is no Jim Leonard. It's like Iowa without Phil Parker. And I know that Luke Fickell will probably get that side of the ball together. I have no doubts about it. But again, a year one head coach, that's kind of a theme for the Big Ten West this year. We talked about it, and we'll talk about it as the season goes on. But I am not nearly as nervous for this game as most people are. There's a lot of hype about Tanner Mordecai. Well, he's never played Big Ten football before. It's a little bit of a step up from the American Conference to the Big Ten Conference, right? And also there's rumors of Wisconsin going more air raid offense. How's that going to look in November? Well, they get us in mid-October, so the weather might be A-okay there. But are you really not going to run the ball with Braylon Allen, a guy who should, by all means, be a Heisman candidate, and put it in the hands of Mordecai instead? I'm predicting an Iowa win here. I think this is something like a 27-14 Iowa win in Madison, and the result probably doesn't look that close. I don't have any faith in the Wisconsin defense, and I think Iowa's going to handle business here.
I'm not sure the last time the Hawkeyes have scored 27 points against Wisconsin, let alone on the road. And unfortunately, for that reason, I'm going with history. I'm going with Wisconsin in a very close game here. I don't see the Hawkeyes scoring that many points, unfortunately. Luke Fickell, like a lot of people respect Luke Fickell, but a lot of people are like, first-year coach, da-da-da-da-da. Well, he did take Cincinnati to the college football playoff. Wisconsin hasn't been there. Iowa hasn't been there. So, I'm going to give the guy his due, even though it's year one. And, with it being the 7th game of the season, I think he's going to have his defense figured out by then to be formidable against the Hawkeyes that, we got to kind of wait and see to see what our offense looks like. And yes, we have Cade McNamara. Yes, we have Eric All, things are looking great on paper, but we need to see the results before I can go the other way. So as in the preseason here, I'm taking Wisconsin, but when it comes game time, 8 weeks from now, 9 weeks from now, might be a different story. But I'm taking Wisconsin here for my first loss, moves them to 6-1 on the season.
So we both got them at 6-1, and we just have it in different spots right now. Next week, the Golden Gophers come to town, the Fighting PJ Flex, and they bring in their first-year quarterback, AK. I'm just going to call him. I'm not going to try and pronounce his name. Mo Ibrahim, gone. Brevin Spanford is back. I believe Ottman Bell is back. He had an injury that he's coming back from, battling back from, but I believe Minnesota lost a lot on defense. A lot of what made that defense special. And Kirk Ferentz also has PJ Fleck's number. And I don't think that changes here. I do think this is something like a 23-20 ball game. I think this is going to be like a sneaky close ball game, but I think Iowa pulls it out in the end and moves to 7-1.
So just like kind of like the history I said about Wisconsin, you got to show me something else to prove it, right? I'm going the other way here. Iowa kicks Minnesota's ass in Kinnick Stadium, and they have for a decade. So, like, Minnesota has shown me nothing other than Ibrahim, who, like you said, is no longer there. Is he in the NFL? He should be.
He's on the Lions roster. I don't know if he'll make the final 53, but he'll certainly have a chance to back up Gibbs and Montgomery.
He was explosive, and then 7-year starter Tanner Morgan? I don't know. Maybe 6. But he was good. He wasn't great. He was good for a Minnesota quarterback. No longer there as well. I'm going with history as well here. Hawkeyes roll ass kicking. It's like 35-3. And maybe 1.
I like your version better than mine. So I will hope for your version, but I will think my version. Let's move it on right along. I believe we are on to the 9th game of the schedule, and this one's a special one. Well, there's a bye week before this one. So we go on by the last week of October. And then November 4, to kick off November, we're in Wrigley Field, maybe, unless the Cubs are playing Game 7 of the World Series.
That's not happening, man.
Oh, yeah. As a Cubs fan, I know it's probably not happening, but a guy can dream.
Right.
But Iowa is playing Northwestern at historic Wrigley Field at the Federal Landmark. So I'm not going to pick Northwestern. I know the history with Northwestern, but we all know what's gone on there. We all know the transfers out. Northwestern wasn't great last year. Not a whole lot done to rectify that, and also all the Pat Fitzgerald turmoil. I'm not picking Northwestern to beat Iowa, even though it's at Wrigley. I think Iowa stomps all over Northwestern and Wrigley, and this, again, could be backup quarterback season by the time the game is over. When we're in the fourth quarter, we're up 45-13, and Joe Labus and Deacon Hill are battling it out for the backup quarterback spot.
That's why that makes me nervous, Andrew. Everything that's going on at Northwestern, it's at Wrigley Field, all the cool lights and all the boom, da bing, da ba. I went to the game in Soldier Field about a decade ago. We played NIU. That game was way too close for comfort. I can't remember who it was. It was Jordan Canzeri on a 3rd and 17, ran it in for a touchdown to take the lead and win by 1, in the fourth quarter. I'm seeing this game as a too close to call. It's going to be very uncomfortable. The Hawkeyes will win this game. I'm looking at 23-20, something like that. It's going to be a wake-up call for the final 3 games of the season. But for some reason, the Hawkeyes, to me, it looks like it's going to be kind of like an exhibition. I don't know. It's fun to be here. Kind of a bowl game in the middle of the season type of deal. I'm not – I don't know. I don't know if their head's going to be in the right place, but they are coming off the bye week. They don't have Pat Fitzgerald. I hope your version, like my version last time, is correct and just wiping the floor with them. Barry Rutter on here on Facebook, is the amount of faith in the Iowa offense a realistic expectation? I'm going to let you take a crack at that, Andrew.
Yeah, since I seem to have a little bit more faith in the Iowa offense, it seems like, without having seen it out there, I think it's more of a faith in Cade McNamara. Everything I've read, everything I've heard about him, it's more of a faith in Cade McNamara rather than the Iowa offense in general. I'll have more on this in my closing thoughts, but I really equate this team a lot to 2018 Iowa. And 2018 Iowa, with Brian Ferentz as the offensive coordinator and Nate Stanley at quarterback, and a couple guys named TJ Hawkinson and Noah Fant, put up well over 31.2 points per game. Good for top 40 in the nation in terms of points per game. And I see maybe something less than that for Iowa this year, but I do think it's a realistic expectation because we've already seen it when Iowa has the right offensive personnel at quarterback and a couple of other key spots in their offense. They do put up average numbers, not the greatest numbers. I don't think it'll ever be elite in the Kirk Ferentz era. So I do think it's a realistic expectation just based off what I perceive to be personnel improvement alone.
Like, there's nowhere to go but up from here, Barry. I'm just going to throw that out there. And my two reasons why there's optimism in the Iowa offense this year is the cohesion and the longevity of the offensive line now gelling together for another year. They were super young on the offensive line last year. I believe 3 freshmen started, and I think 4 played at some point in time over the course of the 2022 season. So another year under the belts, spring practices, fall camps, getting to the middle of the season here. I think that between that and Caleb Johnson's explosiveness, he is on the watch list for the Doak Walker Award. I believe I just heard that this morning. So, I mean, Iowa's best at offense when they can run the football. Between the cohesion and the longevity of the offensive line moving together from freshman to sophomore years and the explosiveness of Caleb Johnson, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that Kirk Ferentz is going to figure out how to run the football this year.
Yeah, we've seen that in the past. Just to put a nice little bow on your point there, think about 2007 to 2008. The offensive line struggled in 2007. 2008 came back with literally the same 5 guys, and Sean Green won the Doak Walker Award. Now, Sean Green was a very explosive running back, but who was at quarterback for 08? Well, we messed around a little bit with Christensen, but too long. But Stanzi mainly took over, right?
Love it or leave it, USA #1.
We're not messing around at quarterback. We know who quarterback is. We've got that all settled. We've got everything settled but the offensive line. And like you said, freshmen and sophomores last year grow into sophomores and juniors this year, and they've added depth, at least possibly starters via transfer portal. So and Kirk Ferentz loves the offensive line. So we'll keep going, but that was a great question and a great segue into the final third of the season.
Yeah, thank you for that, Barry. Appreciate that. We're moving to the home game against Rutgers. Kind of a blah spot on the schedule, in my opinion, Andrew. Know nothing about Rutgers as well. They've been non-competitive in the Big Ten since they've joined the Big Ten. This isn't, who was it, Ray Rice? Back in the Ray Rice days of Rutgers was like the last time they were relevant. I see another washing here, double-digit win. Not, just comfortable win.
Yeah, I don't think Rutgers in the walls of Kinnick in November stands really much of a chance. I think the weather could play some sort of a factor here, but it's still probably a double-digit. This might be like a 23-0 type game. That's the way I see it, but I see us beating Rutgers. So I still only have 1 loss, and we're going into Illinois. What are your thoughts on Illinois this year?
I'm scared. I'm really scared. I respect Brett Bielema. I respect the defensive job he did last year in Champaign, and I'm worried. I gave the Hawkeyes a loss here. I think it's a 1-possession game, so I think it could go either way. And again, when we get to that point in the season when we're doing this show, episode 15 or whatever it is at that point, that my opinion might change. But, I mean, Brett Bielema has owned Kirk Ferentz, in the Wisconsin days too. So I'm slightly worried by that edge. And the Illinois defense, I think a lot of them come back. Not their stud corner. Witherspoon, I believe, is the one that was the first round pick last year from Illinois. He was a stud, but that defensive front is still gnarly too. So it'll be a good test for that offensive line that we previously said that might gel at that time of season. So that'll probably be the matchup that we'll focus on most when we get to that game time.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. One thing I have a big question mark with Illinois is they're breaking in a new quarterback, Luke Altmaier. The transfer from Ole Miss is the projected starting quarterback. You never know what could happen in camp or anything like that. I don't really know too much about Luke Altmaier. Maybe highly recruited, but that's also a theme of the Big Ten West and the Big Ten overall is a lot of transfer quarterbacks making an impact. We see it at Iowa. We see it at Illinois, Wisconsin, Purdue, Nebraska. When we talk about them, like a lot of the Big Ten West teams have transfer quarterbacks that have transferred in Northwestern as well. But as we mentioned, Ryan Walters, who was kind of the orchestrator of the defense for Illinois last year, a defense that was really good, is gone. I like that this game is in Kinnick. I'd be a lot more nervous if it was not in Kinnick, but this might be a Kinnick. I don't think we have a time for this game yet. I think there's a chance that this is a November night game in Kinnick. I also think that there's a strong chance that Illinois and Iowa are ranked. I heard someone on the internet say this. You probably got to be around 7-3 at least to be ranked within the top 25, and I think Illinois will be there. So maybe even better than that. I haven't broken down the Illini schedule, but yeah. Give me Iowa, but barely. I think this is something like we get a safety 19-14 or something like that. And a safety is kind of what seals it. Like it could be that kind of a defensive game. So give me Iowa.
I can't believe it took us 11 games to mention the word safety.
That's because
we definitely had 4 or 5 by now, right?
Yeah, we've probably had 4 or 5 safeties, 4 or 5 pick sixes at least by now. A couple of Cooper DeJean punt returns. I mean, we're giving the offense a lot of credit, but also I think that's one thing that people may not realize is that by the offense improving, it will actually help the defense. Not like the defense needs a lot of help, but it will help the defense to have a consistent and solid offense that I believe it can be. So let's move on to the last week, Black Friday.
Matt Rule comes to the Hy-Vee series, right? I don't know. He might have bit off too much, too much that he can chew here. It's good to have high expectations. He has had a good track record of being a good college coach, Baylor, namely. I think Iowa gets the payback from last season, knocking them out of the Big Ten championship game. And I think it probably comes to a special teams play. I think it comes to a punt return, like you were saying, Cooper DeJean, a blocked field goal, something weird, muff punt. A special teams play will be the deciding factor in this football game. And as we know, Kirk Ferentz has great special teams year after year. Still have one of the best punters in the country in Torrey Taylor. I have no reason to believe that we don't have the edge in special teams in this game, and that's why I will say the Hawkeyes regain this trophy game.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of games on Iowa's schedule this year where revenge is heavily on the mind. It's Iowa State, it's Nebraska. It's 2 games that Iowa barely lost in some terrible sort of fashion. And we do have a major advantage on special teams. I think Iowa is able to, and again, we have a situation where it's first-year head coach, transfer quarterback who's never played in the Big Ten before. Now, Jeff Sims was one of the more highly rated guys out of the transfer portal at quarterback. I believe he's a bit of a dual threat because he played in that Georgia Tech offense. But Adrian Martinez was a bit of a dual threat quarterback, and Iowa seemed to have no problem with him. So I don't know if Jeff Sims is Adrian Martinez, but maybe he is. I think Iowa's got some strong feelings on revenge, and also a Big Ten West championship might be on the line, depending on what Wisconsin's done or what Iowa's done. If you have 2 Big Ten losses, you probably need this one to make it to Indy. And I think that's where the Hawks are going. So I'm going to go ahead and give them, like you said, probably nail biter, closer than it should be. And I think Matt Rule is going to turn this thing around in a way that Scott Frost never did, but it's not year one again. I'm betting against year one head coaches and transfer quarterbacks and betting on the stability of Kirk Ferentz and his coaching staff instead. So give me Iowa at 11-1 heading into Indianapolis. You've got them at 10-2, right?
I do have them at 10-2, and really depends on how Illinois' schedule. I really feel good about laying like a $10 bet on Illinois winning the West. Why not? Like, nobody likes them, but why not? They beat Wisconsin last year. They beat Iowa last year. Like, why not put a little stock into Illinois? I believe they played Ohio State and Penn State last year. I doubt that they do it again.
Yeah. I think they play Penn State, but they don't play Michigan or Ohio State, much like us, where we don't play Michigan or Ohio State. And that's the other thing that people got to remember. We went 8-5 with a terrible offense and played sort of a difficult schedule. We had Michigan come to town. We had to go to Ohio State. Obviously, that didn't go well. And we were in a lot of one-score ball games, whereas, like, if you could have any sort of semblance of an offense, the results are flipped. I'm banking on offensive improvement and a not big drop-off on defense.
Andrew, the irony, you were just talking about, the close losses last year to Iowa State and the close loss to Nebraska, and how often Iowa fans take for granted those close wins. Like, those were close wins year after year after year, the last decade. And we just put them in our pocket and we're like, oh, we beat them, and then the way that we address it when we lose those close games is like, well, we barely lost. So, like, I feel like Iowa fans kind of need a little reality check, if that makes sense, of like a close win and a close loss. The difference is that much, like it's not a gimme in the pocket game anymore. And, Nebraska's closing the gap. Iowa State obviously finally proved that they can knock off the Hawks, and they're in Jack Trice. So, like, I don't know, just the mentality of Iowa fans. I don't know if you have any input on or any rebuttal to that statement, but I feel like in years past, we've taken those close wins and put them in our pockets. Like, yeah, we beat them, but then we don't give it the respect that's due. It was like, well, we barely lost.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Being an Iowa fan myself, I probably do a lot of that, taking it for granted. I will say, and we will talk about this a lot this season, the 25 point per game clause, right? But why, as Scott Docterman pointed out, I don't know if you read his article with Brian Ferentz. It was a very great article. I encourage everyone to go read it. Very well done. But I believe in the Brian Ferentz era, when Iowa scores 25 or more, they're 31-1.
Who's the loss?
I was trying to think about that. I didn't go look up the loss. I want to say it was probably someone like an Ohio State, Penn State, or a Michigan.
Sure.
Right? Some sort of a good team. Yeah, but
you know what? It was probably the Penn State game when Saquon Barkley scored the walk-off game winner.
That is exactly, or was it Barkley or was it?
It was on fourth down. He caught that ball. He high pointed that right up the goalpost on fourth down.
Yeah, I think that was Dotson.
Was it Dotson?
I think that was Clifford to Jahan Dotson. It was a receiver of some sort. But
But I know it was on fourth down.
Barkley was sensational that night.
Yeah, yeah.
I was in Kinnick Stadium about 18 rows up from the visitor sideline across from the student section, and I got a front row seat to the Saquon Barkley show that night.
And wasn't Wadley holding his own in that game as well? It was Barkley and Wadley, right?
It was a Barkley Wadley matchup, but there was no matching up Barkley. There's two guys that I've seen that have just blown me away in real life, and it is Saquon Barkley and Melvin Gordon.
Yeah.
I've seen Melvin Gordon and Saquon Barkley just absolutely go off in the walls of Kinnick. And it gives me nightmares. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Trip down memory lane. I'm scarred. But anyways, so are we both thinking Indianapolis?
Yeah. There's no reason, and I'll save it for the final cut. But yeah, there's no reason to expect with this schedule and this Iowa team to expect less than Indy. Like, there's no reason for it. The defense, the history that Phil Parker puts out there season in and season out, the offense cannot be any worse. Literally cannot be any worse. And with a more friendly schedule, yeah, they could even probably go through 9-3 and still make Indy. But that would be kind of, that would be a letdown.
Right.
I mean, I think we're looking at New York, New Year's 6 or bust for this season.
Yeah, it would. Well, it depends on so much on what happens in the East. If you have all of the top 3 teams, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, all going 11-1, and their losses are to each other in some fashion because they all play each other this year, which is great football, by the way.
Yeah,
because Penn State plays both Ohio State and Michigan, and yeah, they all play each other, and it's gonna be wonderful. If Iowa were to finish 10-2, they probably aren't on the New Year's 6 ladder if they don't win the conference championship game against one of those 3. So,
hey, in your scenario, we go 11-1. So,
yeah, that is what I think it will take to earn that New Year's 6 spot.
So, the scenario you just kind of laid out, and we'll wrap this up with the final cut here shortly. Back to my scenario of the Big Ten going to 18 teams, and you have all those teams go 11-1. You have USC go 11-1. You have Ohio State go 11-1. You have Penn State go 11-1. Iowa goes 11-1. Like, somebody's going to be left out, right? So, like, I truly feel there has to be some sort of division, something. There has to be, like, something to cut this out of just other than, well, sorry, it's the top 2 college football playoff ranking teams.
Yeah, I think maybe it's expand to 20, get 2 more programs in, pods of 4 based off geography. Then, based off that, you can probably take the top 4 teams and have your own, like, Big Ten playoff.
I feel like it's going to happen. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't seem right to me that 11-1 USC, who lost at Penn State, gets passed over because Penn State beat Ohio State and Michigan, and are also 11-1.
Yeah. What if the a lot of this will come down to what the new college football playoffs looks like. Will there be 4 guaranteed spots for the Big Ten and 4 guaranteed spots for the SEC? Possibly. They have the power to make those kinds of demands, or they could just break away. So
ESPN has that power, right? Until 2025, because they own the college football playoff. Let's make no mistake. The college football playoff proper, right? I'm quotation mark proper, is an ESPN product. This is not NCAA. They don't care. They can make whatever rules you want. And you're exactly right. They could be 4-4. And then whatever happens to the Pac and the WAC, if they merge, they get 1. ACC, 1. Big 12, 1. And then the rest of it, free for all. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know that maybe 12 might not even be enough in this wild conference format. It might be 16.
Yeah. So much of it will just depend upon the TV. But anyways, let's wrap this thing up and head to the final cut. And it sounds like you've got it. So I'll let you start off.
My final cut, Andrew, tonight is it's not going to matter how many points Iowa scores. Brian Ferentz, we're going to run roughshod on offense. We're going to cruise past 25 points per game. Going back to Big Ten or going back to Indianapolis, Big Ten title bust or bust. It's going to be a non-factor, although we are going to have the Brian Ferentz point counter on the screen when the season starts. I don't think it's going to be a factor at the end of the day.
I like it. It's bold. I will also do something bold, and I'm kind of on the spot here. I didn't really have anything planned for my own segment, which is just great on my part. That's just me to a T. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and get on that Caleb Johnson hype train, because if that offensive line is as good as Kirk believes, we are going to see the best running back season from an Iowa running back since Sean Green. We had the Marcus Coker season that was pretty darn good, if you want to go back and look at Marcus Coker's stats.
He was a
But
stud.
Sean Green is absolutely the standard, and I am going to say that Caleb Johnson has all the talent. He's 6 foot, 225, looks like he's all muscle if you've seen the pictures, and he's got plenty of breakaway speed. We saw breakaway speed. We saw that 200-yard performance against Purdue last year as a true freshman behind a shaky offensive line. You give him an improved offensive line, and look out. A competent quarterback will definitely improve the run game. And we know that we have a competent quarterback. I think Cade McNamara is competent at a bare minimum. So I'm predicting, north of 1,500 yards, 15 touchdown kind of season for Caleb Johnson. And that's why he's on that Doak Walker list. Probably not going to win it because the running backs in college football this year are just so loaded. But he's probably going to be on that cut list for being a finalist, and you'll see why. So all in on the Caleb Johnson hype train, and that is my final cut.
I love it, Andrew. And you know what, guys? That wraps up episode 1 for the Hawk's Eye View. His name's Andrew Barber. I am Drew Shipley. Have a good evening.